felt God said to me, I want your life. I want it now, and I won't speak to you about this again.
Wow.
Well, one evening I was praying in my bedroom, and my father came to the door. What are you doing? You're taking this religion so seriously, you're losing all your friends. The second prophecy was, those who put me first, I look after. And that was it. So I gave my notice the next day.
Wow.
It came home to, I'm hidden in Christ, and Christ has impressed God. And that counts to my account now. I don't have to impress God anymore. She then wrote to me and said, if you had any romantic ideas, I'm not interested, because I just want the will of God for my life. Well, if I was interested before, I'm now captivated. And gradually it changed, and people began to get full of the Spirit. They loved the worship, and it just grew and grew.
Welcome to the Dancing with Wisdom podcast with me, Sunil Raheja. We've now come into series 4, and I'm speaking to you from the house of Terry and Wendy Virgo. Terry, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Sunil. Thanks. I look forward to our conversation together.
Thank you, Terry. I've called our conversations Not Your Average Great-Grandfather because, Terry, you have 5 children, you have 4 sons, 1 daughter, 22 grandchildren, 1 great-granddaughter, and another great-grandchild on the way. Is that right?
This is true. Absolutely.
Well, you are not the average great-grandfather, are you, really? You're 85. You are a national and international Bible teacher for over 60 years. And you're the founder of Newfrontiers, which is a worldwide family of churches that is together on a mission to establish the kingdom of God by restoring the church, making disciples, training leaders, and planting churches. And Newfrontiers has grown and grown to being over 1,500 churches across 70 countries now. It's amazing. But before we get into that, I want to go into the story of how God has worked in the life of Terry Virgo. And, we were praying earlier on, we're saying about we want one generation to commend the works of the Lord to another generation. And with the power of technology, we're going to talk about that in terms of your story, because your background is quite unusual, isn't it? Because you came from a background of heavy drinking, lots of partying, a very carefree life. And God turned you around through your sister Marion when you were about 16. Just tell us about that.
Yes, I think I was enjoying life in the main. It was a bit boring between Monday and Friday. I worked in London and lived in Brighton and lived for the weekends, which were full of fun. And one weekend, my sister, who lived in London now, had been trained to be an actress, been to drama school, was now beginning to get small parts in plays. And Billy Graham came to London, and she came home one weekend and said to me, I'd become a Christian. And I said, what do you mean become a Christian? I'd never, ever heard anybody talk that language before. She said, I've been born again, which was even more peculiar. Yeah. And then she said to me, do you believe Jesus rose from the dead? And I very casually said, he was raised on the 3rd day, wasn't he? Without any conviction. And she said, that means he's alive. And that phrase kind of caught my attention. Yes. And then she explained the gospel to me in a way that I'd never, ever heard it in my life, that Jesus died to take away all our guilt, that he offers us life and the certainty of heaven. I'd never heard anything like it before. Wow. And I was captivated. And that evening, I knelt with my face in the cushion, I remember, and asked Jesus into my life. And I felt, to my surprise, I felt something happen. And I thought, wow, this is real. Yeah. And
you're about 16 at this time, is that right? You're about 16?
Yes.
Like that. Wow, that's amazing. And then I think you talk about how the fact that you made that commitment and profession of faith, but your life didn't change for 4 years.
I think it was, I was a very poor Christian. I knew it, I understood it. I then actually went to All Souls, Langham Place, John Stott's church.
Yes.
Heard him, first time I ever heard the gospel, actually preached. I was captivated, went forward, shook the great man's hand. And I knew I was born again. But my lifestyle, for some years, I'd been friendly with a group of guys. And we used to party a lot. I'd just drink a lot the weekends. We lived for the weekend.
You lived for the weekend.
And just to pull away from that lifestyle and those friends was very hard.
I remember you said to me that you were attending a church, and was it the vicar or the priest of the church had a list of people he was praying for, but you weren't even on the list. He said that you were a hopeless case or something like that. Tell us a bit about that. Yeah.
Well, I lived this backslidden life, but attended church every Sunday morning. I was always there. Yeah. And it was a real double life. I loved it while I was there. I loved the preaching. I found it was really interesting. It was a very formal church. The church was formal in those days, very formal.
This is the late 1950s, early 60s.
Yes, late 50s. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And but I couldn't pull away from my friends, so I knew I was living a double life.
Right. Yeah.
I knew I was inconsistent. And then one Sunday, the pastor's assistant, actually, who very rarely preached, he preached on, "You did run well, who has hindered you that you no longer obey the truth." Mm-hmm. He took the verse somewhat out of context, but it really had impact on me, that I felt God spoke to me very strongly. And I had felt convicted often, but not enough to change my life. Yeah. And this time, I felt God said to me, "I want your life. I want it now. And I won't speak to you about this again."
Wow.
Well, that really scared me, because I thought, if God doesn't speak to me again, where will I finish up? Yeah. Because I knew that this new life was the real thing. I knew it was authentic. And I knew my other lifestyle was so bad, I was getting worse. Yeah. Where would I finish up if God never spoke to me again? So it was a real kind of a resting of my life.
So a wake-up call, is it?
Yeah, very much so.
And so you had this sort of backslidden period, for about 3 or 4 years or something like that?
Oh, 4 years, maybe 5. Yeah. And later I got to know the young man who preached, and he said to me, I prayed so much for that preach. You didn't often get a chance to preach. Yeah. He said, I felt the young people were all a bit lukewarm. Yeah. He said, I was praying for the young people they had responsibility for. And I said to him, "Did you pray for me?" He said, "No, I never prayed for you. You were a hopeless case." He said, "You were beyond it." So he knew that I was a mess. Yes. But happily, it was I that got captivated.
But what he said really connected with you very, very deeply.
Oh, absolutely. No, it changed my life.
And just to emphasise that, so you were from you're from a non-believing background. I think you said you went to two Sunday schools as a child, but you never heard the gospel.
My parents were not believers. Yeah. There was no Bible in our home. No one prayed. God wasn't part of my life at all. Yeah. So, it was out of the blue.
So your sister Marion first showing faith with you. You're going to church, but living this double life. And then at this point, after about 4 years, suddenly this sermon that you heard really just turns things around for you, and you think, I've got to take... And you changed quite radically at that point.
Yes, I knew that I needed to throw myself into church life, because, quite honestly, I knew the power of my friendships, the world. Yeah, I'd made little attempts before, but not seriously.
So this was radical surgery. I mean, you should say. So this is the book Terry Virgo, No Well-Worn Paths: Restoring the Church to Christ's Original Intention, One Man's Journey. And you talk about the actual journey of faith in this book, and you're very honest and open about the struggles that you had, because it was quite, drinking, smoking, it was everything really. In terms of a licentious lifestyle, and you had to make that very dramatic, it was like radical surgery, that shift from there.
I felt if I didn't get wholeheartedly involved, I would go back. I remember when I made this conviction, I responded. I went out one more Saturday night with my friends, and said, "This is my last Saturday night with you." Wow. Which is kind of strange, really. And they laughed and said, "You'll be back next week." Yeah. And I remember the following Saturday, I got on my motor scooter and drove down to Brighton, which I lived in the other side in Hove, which is quite end of town. And I just among the bars and all the young people, and I felt the power of it. And I thought, no. So I drove back home and put my motorbike away. My parents were sitting in the other room watching television or something. And I sat at home on a Saturday night and I thought, this is terrible, I'm going to die. And they used to say, Christianity is life with a capital L. And I thought, no, it's hell with a capital H. I'm sitting indoors on Saturday night. What am I doing? This is going to kill me. And so I thought, I need to go to church. And if I
You're
don't
so hungry, I think there's a real hunger, I think.
If I don't change radically, I will get pulled back. I know I will. I'll go back again.
So I suppose we would talk about that in terms of repentance. There was a real 180-degree...
Oh, radical change. I mean, there was the fear of God. And I feel... I thought I've got to change my life. So I literally went to church virtually every day of the week just to be somewhere. Yeah.
So you went to every day of the week?
Virtually. I found out something that was happening virtually every evening. I used to work in London. I left home at 7 a.m. I got home at 7 p.m.
Right.
So my days were busy.
Yes.
But my evenings were now empty.
Yeah.
So I tried to fill them.
So you go to church meetings every evening like that. Yeah. And you're working with the at the civil service, and you made a very big decision that you were going to leave the secular world of civil service, and with this new passion that you found in following Christ, that you were going to go into Christian ministry. And I think you were only about 23 at the time.
What happened was I used to commute every day to work. I did that for 4 or 5 years. I worked in London, lived in Brighton, so an hour on the train every day. I used to play cards. I used to keep a record of my winnings, playing 3-card brag.
This was at the front of the train, you said?
Yes. Front,
you said that was interesting. You said that... tell us about the train. Tell us about the train.
The front compartment of the Brighton-London train was like a club. It was like a party. Unlike the normal train where you sit in utter silence, it was, when you came, everyone shouted, "Hello, Terry," you were all together. And I used to play cards in the morning and the evening. I used to fear that someone from church might see me, but usually anyone who was not part of the normal was stared at as if saying, "What are you doing here? You don't belong here." And so that was
part of the group, as it were.
Yes, that was my life. So when this happened, there's another thing I did. I thought I must stop that, and I moved back down the train. So I now have an hour each day, each way. So I've got 2 hours each day. And it happened that an elderly lady in the church, I think, saw something happening to me and just said, "Have you read this?" and gave me a book called Jungle Pilot, the story of Nate Saint, who had flown the MAF flight into Ecuador, I think it was, where these 5 young Americans were speared to death by the Auca Indians. Yes. And I read this book. I was captivated by it, absolutely amazed at this man's life. He wasn't a lot older than I. And I thought, wow, what a life. And when I gave it back, she said, "Have you read this? Through Gates of Splendor."
So she was feeding you books?
She fed me. I read 52 books that year. I still had the diary with every title of every book I read through that year.
And you weren't a reader before that point?
I didn't read much, no. I'd never read a Christian book before.
Wow.
So I think you're kind of rubbing shoulders with giants, reading about C.T. Studd and David Brainerd and Hudson Taylor.
You're about 21, 22 at this stage?
I would have been, but my life changed when I was 20, because I remember I came up to my 21st birthday. I didn't know what to do, because the only way I know to party is to get drunk. So we don't do that anymore. So I had a very dull 21st birthday. But there was that period that my life was changing pretty radically.
So, and you're very much a person who takes life, with both hands. So if you're going to sin, you're going to sin with both hands. Or if you're going to follow God, you're going to follow God with both hands, as it were. I guess that has proved to be the case. So you carried on this passion about wanting to follow Jesus, and you decided that I'm going to actually go into full-time Christian ministry. There's this thing about Bible college, about not wanting to go to Bible college, but wanting to go into full-time Christian ministry.
I think I was very influenced by these books.
Yes.
And about the Christian heroes. I think probably more than I even realized at the time. They were shaping my thinking, that the possibility of serving God. If you read the story of Hudson Taylor, I mean, it's so captivating. And I found my life, identifying with these guys and so that desire to serve God. Meanwhile, I also met a young man called Philip Vogel, who was an evangelist living in Brighton, living by faith, and doing door-to-door evangelism. And he had said to me, anytime you want to pop into our home, come.
Yeah.
Well, my parents were at least disinterested in what was happening. If not, they weren't hostile, but they were not
They must
happy.
have seen a radical change in you. They must have seen...
Yeah, I mean, they were not happy.
Did they question it, ask you?
They said, you're losing all your friends. What are you doing? Yeah. And one evening I was praying in my bedroom and my father came to the door. What are you doing? You're taking this religion so seriously. You're losing all your friends. They saw it as a very negative step in my life.
Yes.
So I've got no encouragement at home.
Yes.
So,
and they were obviously even more shocked that you then decided you wanted...
Well, I would go to this other couple's home often.
Right.
To be encouraged, because at home there's no encouragement, and we prayed. I prayed with him frequently, and so my day is leave home at 7 a.m., get home 7 p.m., and my evenings are I'm at church or at this couple's home, and so I'm trying now to live for God, and increasingly so. And this friend and I, we used to pray together quite a bit. Pray for Brighton. Pray for revival. I read Arthur Wallace's In the Day of Thy Power. I read other books on revival.
Yes.
And I'm beginning to pray. And then I'm beginning to wonder, what do I do in my life? Maybe God wants my life. I remember once a Jehovah's Witness knocked my door, who might have been similar age to me. And I said to him, how do you live? And he said, I clean windows in the morning, and I do this in the afternoon.
Right. Okay.
So I was provoked. I thought, wow, and you don't even know about Jesus. And so I thought, I'm spending 12 hours a day going to London. And so it was this growing conviction that I wanted to give more. How do I give more? And then one weekend, I went actually to a Pentecostal church I'd occasionally slip away to. And there were two prophecies which were just given to the, in the meeting. And one spoke about giving your life wholeheartedly to God. And I thought, well, that's what I want to do. But I thought, if I take a further step, how would I live?
Yeah.
And then the second prophecy was, those who put me first, I look after. That kind of word.
Yes, that kind of word. Yeah.
And that was it. So I gave my notice the next day.
Wow. Yeah.
I've still got my last season ticket for when I used to travel every day to London.
So you're about 23 at that point.
Yeah.
And it was a real step of faith, because obviously your parents would be more, he would have got a stable pension, he would have a stable income, a career plan, even a pension, eventually working for the civil service. And now he's throwing that all away.
Yeah.
And the Lord provided for you in quite amazing ways, really. Tell us about that.
My parents were horrified, because we were a working class family, and my father had lived through the Depression years, getting work, being secure. They were so thrilled that I got a job in the civil service, which is such a secure job with a pension. I said, oh, well done. They were thrilled. So when I walked away from it, they were horrified. So initially with my friend, who was already doing that kind of evangelism, I went with him, and we went from house to house, and we used to pray a lot. So we'd pray in the mornings and go house to house in the afternoon. Yeah. And at first I'd save. One of the things my father had said to me when I started work, it was, save. So I'd save.
So you save, yeah.
And so I lived off my savings. Then I felt God told me to give what I got left to my friend who was living by faith.
Wow.
So it's all gone now. So now I am trusting God for everything.
Yeah.
So I did that for 2 years. And
you have some amazing stories about even like the psalm numbers, you felt God say, pray for that amount, or even when, to set a bit more, or sometimes letters would come with money for you.
Well, what happened, I mean, I'm a single guy. I don't have a lot of expense. I drive a motor scooter. I need petrol. I also started buying Challenge newspaper, which was a Christian newspaper modelled on the Daily Mirror. It looked like a Daily Mirror, but was full of testimonies.
Yeah.
And what one would do is go to a home and would say, if I bring this to you every month, would you like to take it? And a number of people would say yes. Then you go and talk about the testimonies and witness about Jesus. That was the pattern of our door-to-door work. And I didn't have great expense, but obviously I didn't have any income either. So no one had promised me that if you do this, I'll look after you. No one. Yeah. So it was trusting the Lord.
Yeah.
So what would happen would, somebody would, even my pastor, who was kind of shocked at what I'd done, and would say, you should go to Bible college, you get on a normal track, and we'd talk. And then, okay, well, I'll think about it. And he'd shake hands. And then when I took there's a $5 in my hand. And in those days, that would almost take me through another week kind of thing. So that people would give you a little gift, and sometimes through the mail. Yes. They'd become
so people were praying for you, and obviously seeing that God is at work in your life as well.
I think, no one said I will do this regularly, but there would be occasional things through the post. Letters would come with a little, £10 in it or £5 in it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because you mentioned in the book, about how a letter would arrive and in it would be some money, and that the landlady would give you your post, not realising that a few minutes later you'd be giving her the money that had just arrived.
Yes, I moved to a housing estate at the back of Brighton and concentrated our work in that area. And so I saw one, because I used to travel all the way across town to get there. And one day I saw in one door, room for let. I thought, well, I asked, could I come and live? Yeah, they were not Christian people, but you can have the room, pay for it. And so the things would come through the post. And sometimes, I got right down to I've got nothing. And she'd say, there's this in this morning's post. And I'd take it, and then I'd take it to my room. I'll give it back. Say, here's this week's money. Yeah. So I never ever said to her, I'm sorry, I can't pay. I was able to pay
so
every
God
week.
Provided, because you were paying every week, so God provided every week.
It's just a weekly thing. So when funny, because when I came to Christmas one time, and I've got hardly anything, and I thought, what do I do? Because my parents are not Christians, my brother's not a Christian, and do I just say thank you for your Christmas presents? I'm sorry, I've got nothing for you. I'm a Christian, I don't have anything. I thought, this is awful, Lord. I'm praying, and I felt God spoke to me and said, "Ask me for the number of verses in a certain psalm. I can't remember what it was now. The number of verses in that psalm. Ask me for that many pounds."
Wow!
And so I scrambled to find my Bible to find how many psalms, how many verses, and I was thrilled. I said, quite a good number. I've forgotten what it was, but I said, Lord, please give me, because I felt He told me to give me this amount. And within a few days, I had 3 different gifts that added up exactly to the number of verses in that psalm.
And that increases your faith that God is not just we've got a Bible, one of your Bibles here. God is not just in some dusty book, but He's alive. He's living. He's actively involved in my life and my concerns and my worries.
I got to know God.
Yeah.
And I also felt while I was not very good at door-to-door evangelism. And the Jehovah's Witnesses had got there before us. The Mormons had actually built a meeting place on the estate. Oh, wow. So I'm number 3 knocking the door.
Okay.
And so it was hard. Lots of doors just closed in your face. I was not very good at it.
So that was stretching your faith as well in terms of getting that sort of negative responses as well. But God's continuing to be at work in your life. And you say you say in No Well-Worn Paths that Genesis chapter 28, verse 15 really spoke to you. And it spoke to you so much that you've underlined it in every Bible you've owned. And you actually underlined it in this Bible as well that you've got here. I'll just read out Genesis 28, verse 15. It says, "Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to the land, for I will not leave you until I've done what I have promised you." that verse really spoke to you powerfully at this time. And as you said, it's you underline it in every Bible you have.
Well,
even this one.
It was so. It's strange, isn't it? How sometimes you're praying and Bible reading, and there comes that real strong sense of God and God speaking to me, and I couldn't understand it because I had no intention to go anywhere. So why would God say, "I'm bringing you back to this land"?
Yes, because you assume you stay in Brighton.
I'm in Brighton. We've started. We did a summer thing for children, which drew a load of children. Came every day during a week, and from that time on, incidentally, the people who were sometimes hostile at the door. After we'd done this summer camp in the middle of town on a grassy area, you're those young guys who did the summer thing. Oh, they were much more friendly. And we started a monthly family service, and we're beginning to get something going.
Great.
I'm committed here. So then 7 different people over a very short period of time, must be only 2 or 3 weeks, different settings, said you should go to Bible college.
Right.
And I had always resisted that idea.
But why did you resist the idea? Tell us, because this is a fascinating conversation in terms of you said to me that you still resist the idea.
Yeah.
Tell us why. Yeah,
I wanted to get to the people, and I'm at their home. I'm talking about Jesus. If I got to go to Bible college, I'm no longer speaking to these people. And I thought, why go to Bible college? And where's that in the Bible? And I couldn't see in the Bible any place for that. And my pastor used to say, you should go to Bible college. And I said to him, why? He said, well, Paul went to Arabia. And I said, what's that got to do with going to Bible college? And so to me, I mean, some of my great heroes, John Stott, Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones, no, they didn't go to Bible college.
Right. Okay.
So I didn't want to go. But 7 people had said it. And I thought, well, I'd just be a bit hard to refuse 7. So I thought I should at least just see what happens.
Yeah.
And the principal of London Bible College was preaching along the road in another town nearby quite soon. So I went to see him, and I said, if I applied for Bible college, can I go this autumn? Because I didn't want to wait a year and then 3 years. I'm losing 4 years of my life.
I think this is about 1965, isn't it?
Yeah, it must have been, it was 65.
Yeah, the year I was born, by the way. But
so he said, you can apply, come up to an interview, which I did. Yeah. And then they said, you must get yourself a grant, which was normal in those days. Well, you should have applied for a grant a year earlier. Yeah. That was the way it was done. Even getting into the college on such a short thing was unusual. Getting a grant was almost unknown. Yeah. And so I applied for the grant. And to my amazement, without even an interview, I was granted a full grant. And it was the first time they'd ever given a grant to a theological student. Wow. So I thought, well, God is opening the door.
So how was Bible college? You were there for 3 years then?
Yeah, I mean, I found it difficult. I've got to study again. I hadn't studied for years. And when I was at school, I was very backslidden, so I was very lazy with schoolwork. And so I thought...
I mean, you're a great reader. I mean, you're reading all these books, but obviously that's different from just reading and then writing essays.
No, I think my brain was coming alive.
Yes.
I think when you're spiritually and morally backslidden, you have no motivation. And so I just got through. I got necessary A-levels and that sort of thing, but I didn't take much interest. So suddenly I'm interested. So I thought, for instance, studying Greek, if I don't really do well, I won't do at all. So I worked quite hard at college.
Ah, right. So it gave you those skills as well.
Yeah, it gave me motivation to work at it. Mm-hmm. But I found college, it's a strange setting. Mm-hmm. And when I went to LBC, and it's changed now, but when I went, it was still in central London, and you shared rooms. I mean, I shared a room with one other guy, but some were in 3 or 4 in a room, and so many young guys who had given up their work to study got backslidden.
Oh,
because they got no devotional life.
Yeah, so you're in this kind of Christian bubble, but then you sort of lost contact.
I had several give testimony say I lost the Lord in my first term because they were sharing a room. I mean, I used to every term. Because I'd been 2 years in Christian ministry already, I got some principles in here before Bible college. Yes. So some guys went to Bible college to kind of start learning. I felt I'd learned quite a bit before I went to Bible college
about life experience,
about walking with God. And so every term, I'd get my roommate's agenda for the month, for the term, and compare it with mine, and see when my room is empty, because he will be at a lecture, but I won't. And so every term, that's when I fought for times when I could be alone with God.
Wow.
And so I knew each day it might be different, but it was when the room would be empty.
Yeah, no. And obviously the other big thing about Bible college, you said, is that it's where you met Wendy.
Yes.
Yeah. Like that.
That's another story which might take a long time.
Give us a little bit about that. I mean, that'd be interesting to know.
Well, we were often kind of thrown together. Funny thing was, my first encounter with her was entirely negative. I was in the student room, and she burst in with a hockey stick in her hand, and her hair all over the place, and she looked a mess. And I thought, who on earth is that awful woman? That's what I thought. And I was from this worldly thing, which one of the challenges with the girls I used to go out with, they knew how to do their hair, they knew how to make up, look nice. Christian girls in those days, I mean, you didn't do your hair, you didn't wear makeup. I mean, I remember when Billy Graham first came to London, I read in an article, the organising committee were horrified because he flew over early, she came by boat later.
Right.
They found out that his wife wore makeup, and had her hair done. They thought, what are we going to do? Because that was just not the way with Christian women. So the girls at Bible college, they were, to me, horrific. They didn't know how to dress. They didn't know how to do their hair. I mean, I was used to going out with girls that looked pretty good. Yeah. And so, I mean, Wendy looked awful on that day. And the funny thing was, we were often thrown together because I was on what called a witness team where I gave my testimony, and she played guitar and sang. And the more I got to know her, the more wonderful I thought she was. And we were often in settings, and actually, when she wasn't playing hockey, she could look rather pretty. And so gradually, I got drawn to her.
Beautiful.
And then we were on a summer team together. I was invited to lead an evangelistic team, and I was given the team. I didn't choose them, but she was on it.
Yes.
And I offered her a lift on my motorbike once or twice, which she then wrote to me because she left the team early and said, I loved being on the team, but if you had any romantic ideas, which I didn't think I'd communicated much, but she obviously discerned something. I'm not interested because I just want the will of God for my life. Well, if I was interested before, I'm now captivated because I thought that's what I want.
You want a woman who is putting God
first. The will of God. So I was kind of hooked then, and then it happened once more.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten the circumstances, but it was like a second no, and. Then I thought, right, I took 3 days of prayer and fasting with a few things, but she was number one. Either change her heart or get her out of my hair, because I can't, I was seeing her all the time at college. Yeah. And I remember after the third day of prayer and fasting, it was suddenly funny, because I was at college and we just come out of chapel on the Saturday morning, and she came up to me and she said, "Can I talk to you?" And I thought, oh, here we go, the ultimate elbow. So I was horrified, really. And we went to the library annex, and I said, yeah. And she said, this is embarrassing. I said, okay. She said, I've fallen in love with you.
Oh!
Quite.
Oh.
And she said, I know I've rebuffed a couple of times. I thought, you'll never come to me again. And I thought, oh, my word, So we went down to the college chapel together and knelt down and just said, Lord, if this is you.
Yes.
So it was absolutely wonderful.
What year did you get married? What year was you?
We got married in 68.
Married in 68.
So that happened in about 67, I guess. Well, we're one year to go at college.
Yes. Well, no, thank you for sharing that. And fascinating. You talk about, and just sort of moving on, you talk about how the second part of Romans 7 was a description of your life, and this sort of battle with legalism and knowing the good that you should do and not doing it. I just want to just read that from Romans chapter 7, verses 14 to 25. It says, "For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of the flesh, sold under sin. I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Now if I do not do what I want, I agree with the law that is good. So now it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing. Now if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. So I find it to be a law that when I want to do right, evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God in my inner being, but I see in my members another law waging war against the law of my mind, and making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members. Wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then I myself serve the law of God with my mind, but with my flesh I serve the law of sin." And that's that struggle. And it's interesting, this struggle with legalism and trying to please God, but this battle going on. And you say in No Well-Worn Paths, "From having been a heavy drinker in my early years, I had now become teetotal. I never attended cinemas and had no time for television. We never spent any money on holidays. And when Wendy and I were engaged, I even questioned whether it was appropriate to spend money on an engagement ring. As with most legalists, I felt inwardly condemned most of the time. I was never able to live to the standard that I felt was required. I probably would have said that the second part of Romans 7 was a description of my life." Tell us about that, Terry.
Well, when I came to God wholeheartedly, I think I swung away from being, a rampant sinner to say, right, I'm going to make this work. So I became quite rigorous. So I stopped drinking altogether.
Yes, and you need to do that.
That was a big deal.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't even toast the bride and groom. I took out a driving license for non-drinker. I don't drink, full stop. I stopped smoking. I fought that battle, got rid of cigarettes. I walked away from a lifestyle. And one of the ways one did it was almost like imposing laws upon yourself and putting yourself under a kind of legalistic Christianity.
Yeah.
That was the way, in view of how I used to be, now I'm going to make this work.
Yes.
And I thought the way you make it work is to apply the law. And so became a bit of a legalist. Well, quite a bit of a legalist, really. Yeah. As you said about the engagement ring, Wendy wasn't too thrilled with that. Yeah. But where did the Apostle Paul go on holiday? And all that.
Yeah. So they didn't.
All that kind of. Yeah. So I became rigorous, and so when you prayed, it was like you hear in your ear afterwards, is that all? Is that all you're going to pray? Because the devil's called the accuser of the brothers and sisters. He accuses us day and night. Right. I think we tend to think if I don't go downtown, I won't meet Satan. But Satan comes to us and accuses us. So that's always that feel, am I doing enough?
Am I doing, yes.
And so for me, I don't know if I would have called myself a legalist, but I was living that way. With that fear of not doing enough. So for me, the condemnation was writ large, and that sense of am I doing enough? And then for me, when I saw grace, when I totally understood, I think one of the most helpful things, I began to see it. And in fact, I felt God began to speak to me about it, and it was almost like I saw the clouds parted and I saw some sunshine.
Yes.
And then they closed. I thought, did I see something?
Yeah.
I really felt God was drawing me to a more actually biblical perspective.
And you say because you were a Christian for 16 years before you understood grace, and we're going to do a future another podcast on this other book that you call God's Lavish Grace, which again is a fantastic book as well. It sort of really opens that up as to just how wonderful and amazing grace is. And I think because you'd been a legalist for so long, and you'd struggled with it for so long, as you said, when the clouds parted and the sun began to shine, it was even more wonderful.
Yes,
as it were.
I felt a bit like where it says about Jesus and the resurrection, they could not believe for joy when he's alive again. And I felt when I heard grace, I could hardly believe for joy, the freedom. And I think for me, reading Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones, particularly his book on chapter 7 of Romans, was it set me free.
So give us just give us a little bit of teaser on that, because we're going to discuss that more in the next podcast about God's lavish grace. But just one or two little nuggets on that. Yeah.
Well, I think that for me, justification means...
What is justification? Yes, because for some people because you've got justification and sanctification, what do these words mean? Yeah.
Well, when Jesus took our guilt on the cross, he really did. He took it away. He paid the full price. Mm-hmm. He died for my sin, and it says he died to the law, and that we died to the law through the body of Christ. Yeah. So that when Jesus died on the cross, we died with him. So,
and when you were a legalist, you didn't really understand that.
Oh no,
you did not understand that.
I'd never seen that.
You were making your own law, I think.
I think you're not necessarily applying every detail of Old Testament law, but it's a legal approach. It's like you're trying to do something to keep God happy, to impress God. And then it came home to you, no, I'm hidden in Christ, and Christ has impressed God. And that counts to my account now. I don't have to impress God anymore. I'm hidden in someone who's thoroughly impressed him. Yeah. And I know one morning I was praying, and I felt God spoke to me and said, in the way in which Jacob came to his blind old father, Isaac, and clothed himself in Esau's clothing, because he knew that that Isaac loved Esau more. He's my beloved son, and favoured him, was going to bless him. And so he hid himself in Esau's clothing and put skins around his neck and hands, and pretended to be the son that the father loved. Yeah. And I'm praying one morning, and I felt God said to me, don't fear that I'll find you hidden in my beloved son, because I've placed you in the son that I love. Yes. I've provided this for you. Yes. And it was like, oh my word, I don't have to impress God. I'm hidden in someone who's already impressed him. That's beautiful. That he's utterly delighted in.
Just say that again. I don't have to impress God. Just say, I don't have to impress God.
I don't have to impress God. I'm hidden in one who's already impressed him. And this is my beloved son. I'm well pleased, and I'm hidden in him like Jacob was hidden in Esau. So I'm accepted like the Father accepted Jesus. And so that whole thing rolls off. I don't have to impress God. Jesus has done it. It's finished.
That wonderful promise of grace.
I was completely set free.
That's beautiful.
That whole thing, I walked away from it.
Well, we're going to talk more about that in the next podcast, about God's lavish grace upon us. But I want to move on a bit, because just going in terms of your own life story, there's a man called David Mansell who really influenced you a lot. And you say this in the book. I just want to just quote from there. So this is David Mansell, arrived at Seaford in April 1972, and we enjoyed an extraordinary week of phenomenal blessing. He preached on the love of God. His preaching on the love of God was life-changing. His teaching about the church as a committed community of love was totally eye-opening. And that's really stuck with you. I mean, in a sense, it's probably the vision of church that has kept you going and that laid the foundations for Newfrontiers as well. But also, you talk about the fact that church in those days was nothing like the community that you were used to when you were living a pagan life.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges of coming out of my world into the Christian world was my world before was full of sin, but full of love and friendship and very close relationship with my gang of friends. Yeah. There was nothing you wouldn't talk about. You'd talk about into the middle of the night. You'd share your drinks, your cigarettes, your girlfriends. I mean, we were together, very close. Then you go to church, and at the church I went to, which I thought was a great church, had on the wall, do not speak in the sanctuary, literally. Yeah. So when you got your hymn book, you whispered thank you, and took your seat, and you didn't speak to anybody because you were told not
very
to.
private. It was very
Oh,
private.
yeah. So you're there. And we would have said the Church of England people are very formal. And we were silent.
You were silent.
So my pastor used to conclude the meeting nearly every week. Do not forsake the gathering of yourselves. Have a good week. See you next Sunday, kind of thing. Do not forsake the gathering of yourselves together. So that's half a verse. What he meant was be here next week. But what the verse says, but encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near.
Yeah.
So encourage one another. But we weren't even speaking to one another.
Yes.
You didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have known someone you've seen before, wave, but you didn't speak.
It was very,
So
very
that was
formal,
it.
very distant.
So
yeah.
then I kind of discovered later, as time went by, there are over 40 one another verses in the New Testament. You know, pray for one another, encourage one another, forgive one another, confess your faults to one another. It's 40 of them. And we were not doing any of them. We're not even speaking to one another because we're told not to. So that formality kept us. I mean, I could be close friends. My old sinner friends were very close.
Yes.
You know, you weep with those who wept. You laugh with those who... All the Bible things we were doing. But in the Bible, in church, we're not doing them. We don't even know one another. So that was one of the hardest things to go to church, because you left comradeship, friendship. Whereas the Bible would indicate the church knows more about that than anyone in the world. We're in this together. We love one another.
Yes. And so we have, as it were, the teachings, but then it's... But
we weren't doing any of it.
But you weren't doing any of it, yeah.
But so when I later became a pastor, I thought, I want a church that's friends. We're all friends.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I became the pastor, I said, just call me Terry. Well, my old pastor said, you can't do that. They must call you pastor. Right. And you must wear a clerical collar, he said to me. So I never did wear a clerical collar. I've never worn one in my life.
Right.
And I was just Terry.
You just Terry.
And he was kind of horrified that you
Well, Jesus says no one should call you father or
yeah, I'm quite.
Yeah, Jesus said himself.
I wanted to be friends like I'd known in the world. I'd known such terrific friendship.
Yes, and so that experience of real intense community, in a sense, really shaped. You know, you can see how God was shaping. So in terms of as God led you into Newfrontiers and the creation of that. What was it about David Mansell's vision of the church that really sort of suddenly...
Well, I think David was a remarkable guy. I attended a conference that Arthur Wallace had called, and he was a rather formal man, Arthur, outstanding Bible teacher. And I went to this conference, and David was a guy sitting in the front row, and I just thought, what's he doing there? He looked kind of very informal, and I thought, why is he sitting there? Anyway, then he said, David's going to take the next session. I thought, that's a strange guy. And then he preached, and he was hilariously funny, which was one thing, but he was also red hot about the church. It was wonderful. He had a vision for the church, which I'd never seen possible. And because we used to do evangelism in Brighton on the streets and pull people into a coffee bar, and if we could get them in to have a coffee, we'd preach to them, we'd give our testimony and stuff. And you'd have these conversations on the street, and they'd start saying, church. And I said, no, don't look at the church, look at Jesus. And we often said that, don't look at the church, look at Jesus, which seemed like a good answer. But when you think about it, don't look at the church. You should be able to look at the church and see Jesus. Yeah. And I realised...
It should be an embodiment of what it means.
I realised we actually were ashamed of the church, and that was pretty common.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when God's Spirit began to be poured out, a lot of people didn't bother with church. They started going with Youth with a Mission or Full Gospel Businessmen, para-church situations, because the church is so dull and restrictive and hard done. And I thought, no, we need to change the church.
Yes.
You don't apologise for it, you change it.
Yeah.
So that became strongly motivational. And David's message was, he talked about the church in such exciting way, and it was terrifically biblical.
Yes.
And I thought, wow, the church can be wonderful. I never dreamed that the church could be wonderful.
Yeah.
But then I got to get...
And so how have you tried to bring that into the churches that you've led, as it were?
Well, I think that when we first started, because the Holy Spirit was being poured out and people were experiencing the Holy Spirit in a new way, you didn't know how to make that work. In my Baptist church in Brighton, with 700 members, very formal meeting, wonderful pastor preacher. Where does this work? We haven't got any room for this.
Yes.
So people were starting house meetings spontaneously, and initially just to get together in a context of informality, friendship, and openness to the presence of the Spirit. So I was invited, and this is going on. By this time, I'd become the pastor of a church, and I got invited to someone's home in another town to speak at a midweek Bible study. And I went, and I laid hands on some people, I preached the Bible, and they said, "Wow, would you come every week?" And I said, "No, I'm a pastor." They said, "Well, if we meet every week, would you come every other week?" I said, "Yeah, I will." And I brought a car full, so it was a good discipling context. And that meeting grew amazingly. They filled the room. And I used to stand in the door frame, and people in the room, out the room, literally up the stairs, in the kitchen, people everywhere.
So it's like an Acts.
It just grew.
Like a New Testament Acts church.
And the worship, I think we taught grace. Because in those days, if you had a prayer time, it would all be full of guilt. That was normal prayer meetings. We are so sorry for this and sorry for that.
We are for all we did wrong.
That came to the surface straight away.
But that was basically the turn of the whole meeting.
So I began to teach into grace, and actually the guy whose home I went, his wife said to me, "I've noticed that when we worship, when we're opening praying, you and your car full, you never go that way with us. You're always directing us to the love of God. You're always..." And she saw them. And I said to the guys in the car, "Don't follow them when they go into all this confession stuff. It kills everybody. Yeah. Let's worship Jesus." And gradually it changed, and people began to get full of the Spirit. They loved the worship, and it just grew and grew. And then a couple who came right from the beginning, moved to another town, and did the same thing. They invited friends to their home, and they said, "Would you come to us?" So again, alternate weeks to these two homes. So now you come, and you don't dress up in a suit. You don't whisper. There's no back row mentality. You're a room full of friends. Yes. So a whole
You're at home with God. You're at home with God.
Different ethos, different culture. And that was the beginning of Newfrontiers, in that sense, that people were gathering because they wanted God. There was no duty. I don't have to go to church on Sunday. We're here because we want to be here. And we're worshiping because we want to worship. We want to be taught the Bible. Your heart, no one's there for duty. No one's putting their suit on. No one's Mr. and Mrs. It's in first Christian name straight away. And it's a different culture altogether.
And this was this is now in the 1970s, isn't it? Yeah, beautiful. Well, Terry, this is absolutely fascinating. Fascinating to hear your story and how God has worked in your life. We really have been commending one generation to another. And we're going to, in the next podcast, we're going to learn more about God's lavish grace. You've touched on a bit more, but we're going to look about that. Thank you so much for this time, and thank you so much, Terry.
Okay, it's a joy to talk to you.